Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. President Donald Trump welcomed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to the White House Monday, where Trump repeated his call to permanently expel Palestinians from the Gaza Strip. Speaking to reporters from the Oval Office alongside Netanyahu, Vice President J.D. Vance and top cabinet officials, Trump called Gaza, quote, an incredible piece of important real estate that he wants the U.S. to own and control.
Well, you know how I feel about the Gaza Strip. I think it's an incredible piece of important real estate, and I think it's something that we would be involved in, but you know, having a peace force like the United States there controlling and owning the Gaza Strip would be a good thing, because right now all it is for years and years, all I hear about is killing and Hamas and problems. And if you take the people, the Palestinians, and move them around to different countries, and you have plenty of countries that will do that, and you really have a freedom zone.
It was Netanyahu's second visit to the White House since Trump's inauguration, coming despite an international criminal court warrant seeking his arrest for war crimes and crimes against humanity committed in Gaza. During the meeting, Trump said the U.S. will hold direct talks with Iran on its nuclear program in Oman this weekend. Trump, who's repeatedly threatened to bomb Iran, said if the talks don't go well, quote, Iran's going to be in great danger, unquote. In Gaza, Palestinian journalist Ahmed Mansour has died a day after suffering severe burns from an Israeli strike on a tent housing reporters in Khan Yunis. Mansour was one of 3 people killed in the attack, which also killed a journalist with Palestine Today. Gaza's government media office reports Israeli attacks on Gaza since October 2023 have killed at least 211 Palestinian journalists. Israeli forces have killed at least 58 Palestinians in Gaza over the past 24 hours, with several children among the dead. The United Nations warns Israeli attacks on Gaza are now killing or injuring 100 children a day. This is Ghada Dabibek, a 6-year-old girl who lost her arm with an Israeli strike last week.
I was playing at school. I was playing on the swing. I was bombed. My arm, I got injured here on my arm. My arm was amputated.
The Palestine Red Crescent Society is demanding an independent investigation into the killing of 15 Palestinian medics and rescue workers in Gaza by Israel's military March 23rd. Victims of the attack near Rafah were discovered buried in a mass grave with their vehicles, ambulances, and a fire truck buried nearby. A Red Crescent spokesperson called the attack a, quote, full-fledged war crime.
We need justice for the victims, and we need to ensure that all of those who are responsible are held to account. Without this, the crimes will continue to happen. Without this, the systematic targeting for humanitarians, aid workers, and medics will continue to happen.
Nabal Farsakh is with the Palestine Red Crescent Society. Protests against Israel's U.S.-backed war on Gaza are continuing. Here in New York, Palestinian rights demonstrators descended on Grand Central Station Monday. Elsewhere, protesters gathered in front of the UN headquarters to demand the protection of mothers and pregnant women in Gaza as UN officials held an event on maternal and newborn health for World Health Day. Separately, the group Taxpayers Against Genocide delivered a report to the UN Human Rights Council Monday exposing U.S. complicity in systemic injustice and human rights violations against Palestinians. Meanwhile, at Princeton University, students protested an event featuring former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. This is 21-year-old Princeton student Emmanuel Sippy, the daughter of a rabbi and president of Princeton Alliance of Jewish Progressives.
Bennett has enabled violence at the highest levels of government and public life that attempt to justify violence that cannot be justified, killing that cannot be fathomed. His presence on our campus is a desecration of God's name. To his enabling of apartheid, genocide, and annexation, Jews at Princeton say, not in our name.
Microsoft has fired 2 workers who protested the company's ties to Israel's assault on Gaza at its 50th anniversary celebration Friday. Microsoft supplies the Israeli military with AI and cloud technology. This is software engineer Ibtihal Abusad, who organizes with the Microsoft employee-led campaign No Azure for Apartheid, confronting Microsoft AI CEO Mustafa Suleyman.
So the question I wanted to address today is really simple. What does all this mean?
Mustafa, shame on you. You say you claim that you care about using AI for good, but Microsoft sells AI weapons to the Israeli military. 50,000 people have died, and Microsoft powers this genocide in our region.
Thank you for your protest. I hear you.
You're sure you tell me know about this, Mustafa?
I hear your protest. Thank you.
Shame on you. You are a war profiteer.
I hear you.
Stop using AI for genocide, Mustafa.
Last week, the BDS, that's Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions National Committee, announced Microsoft as a priority target and called on consumers to boycott its gaming subscriptions and products like Xbox. In more tech news, an Al Jazeera investigation finds Facebook hosted over 100 paid advertisements promoting illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank. The ads, approved by Meta, were calls for the demolition of Palestinian homes, schools and playgrounds, and fundraising appeals for the Israeli military. The U.S. Supreme Court Monday gave the Trump administration the green light to use the 18th century Wartime Alien Enemies Act to expel Venezuelan immigrants and asylum seekers, but said that any target for removal must have the right to a court hearing. Last month, the Trump administration sent 3 planes with 238 Venezuelans to El Salvador in defiance of a judge's order. They were then transferred to a maximum security megaprison. On Monday, Chief Justice John Roberts also temporarily stayed a lower court's ruling, which ordered the Trump administration to bring back a Salvadoran father to his home in Maryland after he was wrongfully sent to the Salvadoran megaprison despite having protected status. Later in the broadcast, we'll get an update on the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who the Trump administration claims is unable to bring back to the United States, even though the Trump administration is paying $6 million to imprison asylum seekers and immigrants at the El Salvador prison. Meanwhile, the loved ones of Andrea Hernandez Romero, a gay Venezuelan asylum seeker who was also expelled to El Salvador, say they fear for Romero's safety at the notorious Secat mega prison. Romero appears to have been removed because he has tattoos of crowns, one on each forearm, with the words Mom and Dad. Experts say tattoos are not an identifier of membership in the Tren de Aragua gang, as immigration officials falsely claim. He comes from a community in Venezuela where they celebrate 3 Kings Day. In more immigration news, a mother and her 3 children have been released from a Texas detention center nearly 2 weeks after they were taken by Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents in a raid at a dairy production facility near the town of Sackett's Harbor in upstate New York. The raid happened not far from the home of Trump's so-called border czar, Tom Homan, where advocates held protests demanding the family's release. At the time of the raid, witnesses said a group of at least 7 people, including the family, were handcuffed before being removed from a home at the dairy farm and put in a van. The 3 children were enrolled in public school, one of them in the 3rd grade, the other 2 in 10th and 11th grade. The Dominican Republic is enacting a fresh series of border restrictions targeting asylum seekers from Haiti as thousands continue to flee amid political instability and a worsening humanitarian crisis. On Sunday, the Dominican president, Luis Abinader, moved to deploy hundreds of additional soldiers and ordered stepped-up surveillance along the Haitian border. He's also vowed to expedite the construction of a border wall. Dominican authorities have been repeatedly accused of widespread violence and human rights abuses against Haitians. This all comes as humanitarian groups continue to raise alarm over spiraling violence in Haiti, with more than 260 people killed during the recent gang attacks on 2 communities in Port-au-Prince, according to a UN report published Monday. The report details concerns with Haitian authorities and Kenyan armed forces that were deployed to Haiti, which on one occasion took at least 5 hours to respond to a gang attack. Haitians have repeatedly taken to the streets to protest the government's failure to address the security crisis, as armed gangs have now seized some 85% of the capital. President Trump has threatened to increase U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods by an additional 50% unless Beijing rescinds retaliatory tariffs imposed on U.S. goods. Trump said the new tariffs would take effect on Wednesday, raising the U.S. tariff on Chinese goods to 104%. In response, China's Commerce Ministry promised to fight Trump's tariffs to the end. After headlines, we'll look at how auto workers in the U.S. and Mexico are responding to Trump's trade war. A federal appeals court has overturned the Trump administration's firing of 2 top federal labor officials, ordering they be restored to their positions. Trump abruptly fired National Labor Relations Board member Gwen Wilcox in January. Kathy Harris, who led the Merit Systems Protections Board, a judicial body that oversees protections for federal workers, was ousted weeks later. Federal law says that NLRB and MSPB members can only be fired for neglect or malfeasance. Trump officials are expected to ignore the latest ruling, likely taking the legal fight to the U.S. Supreme Court. In 2021, Wilcox became the first black woman on the NLRB after being confirmed by the Senate following her nomination by President Biden. And a fired Justice Department lawyers accusing her former employer of intimidation tactics after the department planned to send armed U.S. Marshals to deliver a letter warning her against testifying to Congress about what she's called the ongoing corruption of the Trump administration. Liz Oyer told lawmakers Monday the Marshals ultimately called off their plans to visit her home after she confirmed also receiving the warning letter via email. Oyer spent 10 years as a federal public defender before then-President Biden appointed her to serve as pardon attorney 3 years ago. She was testifying to a joint hearing convened by Democrats on the House and Senate Judiciary Committees.
The letter was a warning to me about the risks of testifying here today. But I am here because I will not be bullied into concealing the ongoing corruption and abuse of power at the Department of Justice. DOJ is entrusted with keeping us safe, upholding the rule of law, and protecting our civil rights. It is not a personal favor bank for the president.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York, joined by Democracy Now!'s Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.